There's a quiet kind of pain that deep thinkers carry around with them every single day. It's not the kind of pain that screams out for help or demands attention. Of feeling emotions that other people just push away or pretend don't exist. You know what it's like? You're sitting at a dinner table. The conversation is light and fluffy. Laughter about the weather, gossip about a coworker, everyone nods and smiles because that's what you're supposed to do. It just lingers, like this invisible weight pressing down on your soul, reminding you that you see things others don't. And in that moment, you feel the shift. The laughter fades. People shift in their seats. Someone clears their throat. He didn't mean that as a compliment. It was a warning. You ask the questions no one else does. You wonder why grown-ups lie so easily, why so many rules feel so random, why love sometimes comes with conditions. And by the time you're an adult, you've built entire worlds inside your head, filled with things left unsaid, truths nobody wants to hear, feelings that don't fit the script. At work, you're told to stick to the script. And people really don't understand deep thinkers. When you share a big, messy idea, they think you're showing off. When you sit in silence, they think you're judging them. If you talk about your pain or trauma, they think you're dramatic. If you ask questions, they say you're overthinking it. Maybe you saw a pattern that was destroying them and you tried to help them see it. But instead of gratitude, you got silence, or anger, or they just ghosted you completely. In relationships, you're told you're too intense. Real doesn't entertain. Real doesn't make people comfortable. They just rearrange their prejudices. They repeat what they've been told. You lose the approval of those who are content to stay on the surface. That's the tragedy of awareness. The more awake you become, the more alone you feel. How do you live in a world that fears the very thing you are? Or, this doesn't feel right to me. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're told you're too sensitive, too intense, too negative. Not because you're broken, but because the world around you is asleep. You're just awake, and the world, it fears what's awake. They defend what they've always believed. They perform, but deep thinkers, they don't perform. You dim your light so others won't feel uncomfortable. You soften your words so they won't flinch. You pretend to care about shallow things just so you'll fit in. But no matter how hard you try, it never really works, does it? They question. They break things apart, put them back together, stay up at night wrestling with contradictions. They don't crave approval. They crave understanding. Real makes people think. And thinking, really thinking, hurts. You're feeling the things they're too scared to feel. And that makes people uncomfortable, not because you're wrong, but because you're right. On social media, you're told to just be positive. But remember this, if you've ever felt like you were just too much for the people around you, you weren't wrong. They don't question, they don't dig deeper. They just absorb whatever the culture feeds them. From the moment you show up on this planet, you're handed a script. What's good? What's bad? What success looks like? What failure means? You're taught to compete, to obey, to smile even when you're sad, to be polite even when you're disrespected. And you definitely weren't broken. You were just born into a system that was never designed to support your depth, so you hide it all away. Not because you want to, but because you've learned exactly what happens when you don't. But instead of answers, you're told, don't ask so much. Just do as you're told. Why can't you be like the other kids? Because in a world that fears depth, being truly self-aware isn't some special superpower. It's a heavy curse, but the truth is, it happens more often than you admit. You shine light on the shadows they've buried for years. You remind them that something is missing, and that reminder stings. So, what happens? Deep thinkers often face resistance. Or worse, mockery and distance, not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. A mirror. Somebody else says, anyway, and just like that, your truth disappears into the awkward silence. Jung called this the encounter with the shadow, and the reality is, most people don't want to meet their shadow. So they reject the person who shows it to them, and often, that person is you, but deep thinkers, they can't pretend. They just can't. They see through the fake smiles, the hollow traditions, the systems that run on empty promises. He believed that the deeper you go into your own mind, the more alienated you become from the world around you, and not because you're broken or weird, but because the world rewards illusion. It's the pain of noticing too much, of hearing the things people don't say out loud. And then you open your mouth. You say something real, something honest, something that doesn't fit that shallow rhythm. You feel it, don't you? That sting of rejection. That tiny moment where you realize you're too much for this room. Carl Jung, you've probably heard of him, understood this perfectly. It lifts up the people who smile on cue, who nod without question, who pretend everything's fine even when they're falling apart inside. Jung once said, the more intelligent and self-aware a person is, the more they suffer from the general unconsciousness of society. And that curse, it doesn't show up overnight. It starts early, from the moment you're a curious kid, so you learn to stay quiet. But inside your mind, the questions just get sharper, more restless, heavier. But here's the thing, the world doesn't want to see that. Carl Jung believes society fears what it doesn't understand. But here's the truth, you're not overthinking. You're seeing things clearly, you're paying attention to what others miss. You speak truths that most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. A mirror that reflects all the things people don't want to see about themselves. Have you ever tried to warn someone? Tried to tell them the hard truth before it was too late? You weren't being negative, you were just being real. But here's the thing, real is dangerous. Jung said that most people don't actually think, but that craving comes at a cost. And yet, you still try to connect, don't you? Because once you've felt the frequency of truth, you can't go back to pretending. So what do you do? Where do you go? That's what we'll dig into next. Jung called it mass-mindedness. It's the idea that most people don't think for themselves. If you follow that script, the world calls you mature, successful, well-adjusted. But if you question it, if you say, why are we doing this? But you're not to anything. Let's go deeper, think back, really think, to your first memories of school. Do you remember being rewarded for your curiosity, your big questions, your emotional insights? Or were you rewarded for sitting still, memorizing the right answers, repeating what the teacher told you? For so many deep thinkers, school is the first place they feel that suffocating weight of conformity. Sit in rows, raise your hand, don't speak out of turn. Don't question the lesson, it wants you to follow. Because followers are profitable, followers are predictable. Followers don't disrupt the system. Fear of the unknown, fear of truth, fear of the human soul, and that fear, scared of being truly seen, scared of having their own illusions cracked open, scared of meeting their own shadow, not because they really are, but because they live at a frequency most people can tune into. It shapes the way we work, where status and productivity are valued more than meaning or purpose. It shapes the way we live, rushing around, chasing the next thing, scrolling endlessly but never pausing to ask, is this even what I want? And that line, it hits hard, doesn't it? Because you know it's true. The moment you do, that is the moment you abandon your soul, and Jung would never want that for you. He believed that the greatest hope for this world lies in people brave enough to stay conscious in a society that is mostly asleep. Not physically, but mentally, spiritually. You walk into a room and you can sense the tension before a single word is spoken. You listen to someone else's words and you don't just hear what they say. You hear the pain they reburying, the fear they're hiding. And deep thinkers, they're like open canvases. Your thoughts get cloudy, your boundaries get blurry. Your energy drains, slowly, silently, until one day you realize you've been carrying everyone else's weight, but your own needs have been buried at the bottom of the pile. People feel safe projecting onto them because they're calm, they listen, they're deeply empathetic. And by the end of that interaction, they feel lighter, calmer, but you feel like you've been drained dry. How many times have you seen through someone else's mask and said nothing because you knew they weren't ready to hear it? But they don't see that your silence isn't rejection, it's survival. You're not pushing them away because you don't care. You're pulling back because you need to recharge. Brave enough to stay awake, even when sleep looks so tempting, you are that hope. You don't get to numb out the ache in your chest when things don't line up with your soul. You feel everything, the beauty, the tragedy, the chaos, the silence. The one who always seems to have it all together, but inside, you're exhausted, and in a world that wants you to scroll past it all, to numb out, to move on, feeling is an act of rebellion. Relationships turn into therapy sessions. Friendships become emotional rescue missions. Conversations feel one-sided. You hold space for everyone, but who holds space for you? So rebel. But let's be real. Being a deep thinker doesn't make life easier. It makes it harder. After a while, you start to doubt yourself. You wonder, am I really too sensitive, too intense, too dramatic? And you feel the temptation to just stop thinking so much, to stop feeling so deeply. How many times have you dulled your truth down just to be understood? It doesn't just stay inside classrooms, it seeps into everything. And deep thinkers don't just crave that space, they create it. And when they do, the people around them feel it, and a lot of them don't like it. Right and wrong aren't based on truth. They're based on authority. To run from introspection, to associate stillness with laziness. So when a deep thinker walks into a room, they bring this presence, this calm that's not empty but full. Their eyes don't just look at you, they see you. And that can feel terrifying for people who've spent their entire lives hiding from themselves. And if you dare to poke holes in that authority, well, you're called difficult, or distracted, or worse, too much. But here's the thing, the world doesn't want you to think deeply. Carl Jung saw this clearly. He said any system that discourages people from exploring their inner world is a system built on fear. It shapes the way we date, where surface-level attraction is more important than emotional connection. Jung believed the human soul isn't meant to move at the speed of modern life. It needs space, it needs silence, it needs stillness, it needs shadow, because people have been taught to fear silence. So what happens? They push the deep thinker away. Not because they hate them, but because they're scared. This is why so many deep thinkers get labeled as loners, weird, intense, or too much. Carl Jung said, loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. How many times have you wanted to talk about something real, something that matters, only to be met with blank stares or shallow replies? That's not connection, that's survival. And surviving in a world that doesn't understand depth comes at a cost. But please, don't abandon your depth just to fit into a world that fears it. Brave enough to keep asking questions, even when the answers hurt. Because you don't get to pretend. You don't get to lie to yourself. If you're a deep thinker, there's a good chance you've walked through life wondering, why am I always so tired? You ever wonder why that happens? Jung had an answer. He called it projection and unconscious vampireism. Here's what that means. Projection is when someone takes their unresolved emotions, fears, or desires and dumps them onto someone else. But there's a danger to that. When you're constantly absorbing everyone else's pain, you start to lose track of your own voice. And the worst part, no one notices. Because you're the strong one, the calm one. This is how the world drains deep thinkers, not with violence, but with dependency. And when you finally set a boundary, When you say, "I need some space," people call you selfish, cold, distant, because being awake in an unconscious world is draining. Especially when that world is designed to keep you distracted. Let's talk about that distraction for a second. Look around. Everywhere you turn, there's noise. Ads screaming at you that you're not enough. Algorithms nudging you to scroll, swipe, consume. Thousands of messages every day whispering, "Fix this, buy that, chase this dream," because deep thinkers don't passively scroll, they process. Why is our vulnerability edited out of our lives like it's some flaw to hide? They absorb, they analyze every headline, every comment, every photo. It triggers questions. Don't sit with your sadness, just keep going. But deep thinkers can't just keep going blindly. Not when they feel the cracks in the system, so they pause. They reflect. They sit with the questions that no one else wants to ask. And the world punishes them for it. But it can feel so lonely. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes, and shadows, shapes society more than logic does. And right now, that collective unconscious is terrified of depth. There are others out there, scattered across the world, carrying the same questions, feeling the same ache. Others who are quietly waiting for someone to say what everyone's been too afraid to admit. Don't bury your insight just to make other people comfortable. It'll bribe you with comfort in exchange for your silence. It'll praise you when you numb out. It'll applaud you for pretending. There comes a moment in every deep thinker's life when they stand at a crossroads and ask, is it worth it? Is it worth seeing what others refuse to see? Is it worth carrying thoughts too heavy to speak out loud? Some days you'll feel completely lost. Other days you'll feel cursed. But listen to me, that emptiness you feel sometimes, that isn't failure. That's space for something real to grow. Is it worth feeling this much when so few understand? Loneliness is feeling unseen by the world. Solitude is finally seeing yourself. Because you realize you were never too much. You were just too real for a world that thrives on pretending. That fear shows up in our schools, in our media, in our workplaces, systems designed not to help us grow inward, but to keep us moving, consuming, distracting ourselves. Maybe you're not meant to be liked by everyone. Maybe you're here to be a mirror, to show people what they've buried, to say the things they're too scared to say. And if you're a deep thinker, you don't just see it, you feel it. The illusion cracks open just a bit. Truth breathes again. The soul feels just a little less alone. That's the moment you choose. Shrink yourself down to fit into a world that doesn't get you, or expand into your truth, even if that means walking alone. You feel how every post is curated to hide what's real. You notice how beauty is marketed as worth. You see how fear sells safety, how outrage gets clicks, how your attention is hijacked, not earned. And the cruel twist, even when you see through the manipulation, it still wears you down. At work, they're seen as too philosophical, too idealistic, not productive enough, but you are. That version of life, that's not really living, that's surviving. And you were never meant to just survive. In relationships, they're told they're too intense, too emotional, too much, but what they really are is real. A heart that won't go numb, a soul that can't pretend. That's not a flaw, that's your calling. Jung said every person carries a psychological destiny. And the deeper the thinker, the more sacred the task. And in a world addicted to performance, being real is a radical act. Why is everyone pretending to be so happy all the time? Why don't we talk about shame, or grief, or fear? Jung believed that the collective unconscious, all those deep, unspoken fears they tell you, don't slow down. Don't ask why. You stop getting invited to certain tables. All because you refuse to play the game. You refuse to flatter egos. You refuse to say, "I'm fine," when your soul is breaking. In school, they're called distracted or lazy dreamers. But radical acts come with a cost. You lose friends. You get passed over for promotions, and that refusal, it's powerful. Carl Jung said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. You're awake, but the price of awakening is isolation. Still, there's hope because you're not the only one. And when two deep thinkers meet, really meet, something shifts. So please, don't shut yourself off. Carl Jung believed that moment isn't a breakdown, it's a beginning. And here's the honest truth, the world will not ask you to do this. It'll beg you not to, but deep down, you'll know. You'll feel that tightness in your chest, that dull ache in your bones. You were born with a mind that refuses to be tamed. Not everyone is meant to go inward, to confront their own shadow, to walk through the fire of the self and come out changed. It's not a comfortable path. There's no clear map, no cheering crowd, no perfect finish line. Because when you stop being what the world expects, you start becoming who you truly are, and that's when life really begins. Hear us the part they don't tell you. Deep thinkers aren't here to be understood by everyone. They're here to awaken the few. Yes, that comes with solitude. But solitude isn't the same as loneliness. And when you do, really do, you stop chasing other people's approval. You stop begging to be chosen. You stop bending your truth just to be palatable. Jung believed that when you finally embrace your inner complexity, when you stop running from it, you become medicine. Not in some big, showy, superhero kind of way, but in the quietest ways, the way you listen without judgment. You just have to stay awake, to honor your depth, to stop apologizing for who you are. That alone is revolutionary. The way you hold space for someone's truth. The way you refuse to look away when things get uncomfortable. You don't have to write a book or stand on a stage or fix the entire world. They're out there, feeling the same ache in their bones, the same pull in their soul. But they lines only find you if you stop hiding behind what you think they want you to be. And slowly, almost invisibly, the right people will start to find you. Because the truth is, this world doesn't need more polished, agreeable, on-demand versions of you. It's about being true to your mind, your heart, your soul, your reason for being here. There's an entire undercurrent of people like you, scattered in hidden corners, craving depth, honesty, and truth. The world may not celebrate them, but they are the ones trying to save it, quietly, relentlessly, even when nobody notices. Don't let the world make you doubt it. Keep asking the questions no one else wants to ask. Keep bringing light to shadows. Keep choosing to feel, even when it hurts. And if you want to support more raw, real, honest content like this, consider sending a super thanks. It helps more than you know. Keep choosing to see, even when it isolates you. And if you ever wonder, is it worth it? Come back here. Listen again. Remind yourself, you were never the problem. You were the mirror. You were the light. You were the rebel heart who refused to sleepwalk through life. It needs your rawness. It needs your questions. It needs your uncomfortable silences and your inconvenient truths. If this spoke to you, if you felt that ache in your soul that says finally, someone gets it, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video so it reaches the ones still searching. Silently, bravely, without asking for applause. And that's worth it. Drop a comment below, just one word that describes how you truly feel right now. I read every single one, the ones who crave real conversation. The ones who see life in metaphors. The ones who dream in symbols and ask why before they ask how much. Those people exist, and they're searching for you too. So let the world misunderstand you. Let them call you too intense, too serious, too sensitive, smile gently, and go even deeper. Value it so deeply yourself that everyone else has no choice but to rise with you, or walk away, and if they walk away, let them. Carl Jung believed that only when individuals transform themselves can society truly change. And who transforms the world, not the loudest or the trendiest or the richest, but the most conscious. The ones who dare to look within and come back with light. That's you. So stop waiting for permission to be real. Stop waiting for someone to tell you your depth is valuable. Deep thinking was never about being liked. So if these words made you feel seen, if they echoed something inside you that you've never been able to say out loud, hold on to that. This is your reminder that you're not alone, and you never were. So keep noticing, so let's keep this space alive. Subscribe and stay close, because here you'll never be asked to apologize for your mind. This world may never fully understand deep thinkers, but one day they'll realize it was the deep thinkers all along quietly trying to heal it.